All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for attending the July LDA monthly webinar training series. The feature or the topic of this month's webinar is going to focus around compliance and how you can automate compliance using life design analysis. Or I see a few names of advisors that are using LDA in more of an enterprise instance. So all this will translate to any iteration of LDA, no matter where you're coming from. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of the needs-based selling approach that CHLIA implements or requires for a compliant insurance sale, and really how all those elements can be checked off by using life design analysis, but also some other tips and tricks for compliance that can really make things easier or just have it all centralized. I feel like that's a big gap in the business for advisors before using LDA, or even those that are using LDA just purely for presentations or just quoting. There's a lot of different compliance options that we can include within LDA for your clients to ensure that all those elements are checked off and everything is neat and tidy if something ever were to occur down the road, such as an audit process. So you have all your ducks in a row and everything together. So we'll take a look at all that. And afterwards, we'll also look at some other best practices within LDA. Some of this will fall in line with the compliance capabilities that we'll be discussing today. Others will be a little bit outside of it, but also help while you're getting to that compliant presentation within the program. As always, we will reserve time at the end of the webinar for a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to refer them into either the chat section of the webinar or into the Q&A area. Because the session is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards, we just turn off microphones so we don't have any audio disturbances either. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. So I will start sharing my screen. And what we should see here is a slide where we're going over the 6 elements that CHLIA lists for a compliant insurance sale. So there's 6 pillars to this, starting from client expectations all the way down to a reason why letter. So these are elements that ideally we need to check off when we're interacting with a client to ensure that we're being compliant. And then we have proof of this as well. And all of these can be captured within one single LDA presentation, or at least in the process of designing an LDA presentation. So let's discuss each one of these elements, and then we'll show how it translates inside of LDA. And then we'll talk about how you can get to this point and how you can easily accommodate each one of these options within your LDA report. So the first element is the client expectation. So establishing a common understanding of the scope of services provided for the immediate purchase of any ongoing relationship. So usually a good indicator of that would be disclosing your process and discussing that, or even just documenting that for a client. And I find an easy area within LDA, and I'll move over into an example presentation here as I share my screen with you, is just simply the mission statement, talking about how you work, how your operation, what expectations can be for your client when working with you or when going through the purchase of an insurance option. And that's something that can be automated to appear in every single case that you create. The mission statement for those that are brand new to LDA is an automatically selected page option. It's also selected in a lot of the report templates, which we'll talk about later on in our best practice section. But it is something I usually recommend adding in because it's such an easy way to check off the client expectation right there without any work needing to be done. The mission statement, when it's created, it is available for every single insurance case, so you don't need to add it or modify it. It is just there. It is a baseline, so you don't have to think about it afterwards. So that's a very easy one that we could check off using LDA. Next is the disclosure. Now, there's kind of 2 ways that we can do this in LDA, and I'll go through the examples. We can either have this set as a automated page, so it's always there, very much like that mission statement, or we can have it so it's customizable for every client interaction. So just going back to my LDA report, if we want to have it kind of standardized, set in place for every single insurance presentation, we do have a disclaimer page which you can set up. And keep in mind, if you are a, let's say, advisor in Quebec, you work with both French and English speaking clients, you can have the mission statement and disclaimer set in both English and French. So depending on your language setting in LDA, that will determine which one is utilized. But with this disclaimer, you could set it, forget it, so it's always available inside of the report so long as you have that disclaimer page selected within your report, which again, it is very much like the mission statement where it's automatically selected for any new users and with a lot of our report templates. Now, another way you can utilize, and I'll just scroll past our reason why, which kind of teases what we're showing at the end is you can add in a custom template document. This is one that we provide to all LDA advisors. So here you can see even in the title, it's saying, please call them for your own personal information. So this is available for anybody that's using LDA, even the custom versions of LDA. You should have this available within your account, or it is something you can load in very much like this. So listing like who you are, who you're contracted with, the signature options. Now, although we don't have DocuSign integration in LDA, you can always generate a PDF file. And if you're wondering how to do that, just at the very top of the report, there's a generate PDF option. So you can load that page into a DocuSign or DocuSign-like application, have the client sign it. So that's all together. And then, of course, you can load this information into LDA after the fact. But and again, so this document, instead of being sent separately as a PDF or as a Word doc, which I typically see, this would be encompassed all within your one report. And that template is available, so you don't have to go to like a Google Drive or load up a Word doc and make those modifications every time. It's just within that process in LDA. Now, going back to the next option would be the fact finding. So this kind of ties in with the second option here, which is the needs analysis. Now, with the needs analysis that you can produce in an LDA report, here's the outputs. This would talk about more step 4 and disclosing that need and breaking down that need or where there's any gaps. Um, in order to get to this result, you can either design it with a client in your LDA account, or you can share a needs analysis to the client so that they can fill it in from their own device. We'll talk about how you can do that in just a little bit, but there is the ability for client input on this, but you could also do this yourself to get to this end result. Now, the one thing I love about the needs analysis in LDA is that it's interactive. So it's not just disclosing a current need like you see here in this version. We could talk about future need. How I would do it is by utilizing these legend options below the pie chart. So for instance, if I want to show my client that eventually they'll pay off their debts, we don't need to factor that into insurance after a certain point in time. I can select that legend and notice here how it's removed that debt component from the needs analysis here. And now it's showing the new need once that's no longer there. And I continue that on with maybe when kids get to a certain age, no longer needing education in there, income replacement, once we retire, mortgage, eventually paying that off, but maybe there still is a permanent need for insurance that we need to consider within the recommendation. So this is a great way that you can not only tease what today's need is, but what that future need is. So if you are recommending a permanent solution, it's also a great way of planting that seed. So those are those two elements right there. Another thing that I really like about this too, or advisors that are coming to LDA, is that we're not including this in a separate document, or if we like I don't know, like a Manulife needs analysis, but we're not recommending Manulife plans. It doesn't look weird to the client that we're showing one carrier, but we're recommending another. So it avoids any unnecessary confusion. That goes to the advise and recommend phase, which really comes down to the presenting of recommendations. And that, of course, is LDA's one of the main pillars, of course, how we can show insurance recommendations. We can compare different options for the client inside of that one report. We can use our LifeGuide integration. We can bring in data from the carrier illustrator. So that really is taken care of just strictly by how we operate within LDA. Now, I'm sure everybody here has seen the outputs and what we can do with LDA and how there's really no limitations so long as we have the data for those plans and, of course, visualizing it. So really the nice thing about this is just clearly disclosing it to the client. That's an easy one that you could check off by using the LDA reports, but everything is encompassed together. That's another big thing. So we don't have different documents for each plan. They're all consolidated into one, and that's also consolidated with that compliance information. And then the final one, as we saw here, was the reason why letter. So that is something that we can add into the LDA presentation, just like what we saw with the advisor disclosure. So again, this is a customizable template that we offer to anybody that's using LDA or a custom version of LDA for an enterprise instance. And you can modify this and, of course, add in the text to differentiate this for the client and their specific need and the reason why you're recommending a specific option, or you can add in your own compliance document. So this is something that would need to be modified case by case, but it's something that would be done within your process of getting to this end recommendation. So very easy to do. And the one thing that we are looking at doing over time is based on the plans that are being included in the report, or based on the needs analysis that was created for the client. having text autofill or some autofill options based on the data that's already inside of there. So we are working towards that as we speak. So know that it's not going to be as manual as it may be right now. But again, having it all in one is definitely an easy way to work with this as opposed to separating it all and sharing one case link as opposed to multiple documents. I think that's really where you're going to see a big advantage. So in the needs-based selling, these again are the main elements. So now that we've gone through them, let's talk about how we can get to these end results while you're working through LDA. So what I'll do is I'll just go back to the home page by clicking on the LDA logo. And just for everybody that's here, again, as a reminder, feel free to throw any questions in the chat section. I'll be sure to address it during the Q&A portion. All right, so that brings me back as always to our dashboard. And for those of you that haven't seen this, we do have a new business dashboard option. We have training materials on that available on our YouTube channel. So I'd recommend reaching out or viewing those materials, or you can reach out to us and our customer success team via the live chat. Again, that's in any version of LDA. You'll see that on the bottom right-hand side of the page. But for a lot of these settings, such as like the mission statement and the disclaimer, that can be added through the account setting option that you see anywhere where it says welcome in your name, which is every single page on the top right. And you'll see this option here for account settings, the one with the cog wheel here. So once selected, this will take you to the account settings, the very first account settings section that you'll see through the tabs at the top. And note, you won't have as many as I do as an administrator, but you will see this cases option that we're on right now. But within that cases option, right near where you can add in your logo and your basic contact information, you'll see the mission statement and you'll see the disclaimer section, as well as the French text box for anybody that is working with both English and French clients or exclusively French clients. So keep that in mind. But once you make the edits of the text into this section here, or in this one here for the specific disclaimer, once you're done, just scroll down to the bottom of this page, click save and continue. And every time you generate a report that has the mission statement and disclaimer page selected, that text will appear inside of the report, very much like that option that we just saw. So you do it once, you set it, if you forget it, you're done. And now that's automatically an element that's checked off anytime you're using LDA, along with the advise and recommend, which we do naturally just through the presentation output. So that's all you need to do. Just go again into account settings, enter in that text, click save and continue at the bottom. And just remember where you can see it is under the cases tab. So just below where you can add in your logo. And for those of you that haven't done it, just a side note, highly recommend doing that. Or if you don't have your colors in there, if you are a Premier subscriber, let us know and our team can help load those in. Look for the mission statement and disclaimer text box, enter that in, and away you go. Common question I get is, well, what if I already have it in a document? You can add it in so long as your document is text-based. So the primary two I'm thinking of are a PDF file and a Word doc. So you can copy and paste the text into here and then just make sure the spacing and everything looks correct before you hit save. And then you can go down, click save, and away you go. Perfect. So let's go back now to a design case page for a report. So I'll go back to the case that it was last on just by clicking that view last case button. And that'll take us to the next options. So first off, let's take a look at the disclosure and then we'll look at the fact finding. So the disclosure, and actually this kind of falls in line with the reason why letter as well, were added through this option here called notes. So when you click on notes, what you'll see here is that there's a report notes section where there's a title and a body of text. And right beside that, there's this concept option. So what I did is I clicked on concepts, and we're going to change the name of this button soon because the origin of it initially was to provide descriptions of concepts or insurance strategies. So you had a written description of them to help educate the clients. But over time, we realized that it'd be a great asset for this area to use for compliance documentation. So that's where we loaded in the reason why letter template and the disclosure one. So what I've done is I clicked the reason why, this was the end result. The text appears as you can see. And then in this area is where you can make those text edits, or you can modify this based on the client need and then the recommendation you're making. Now you can add in more than one. And when you add in more than one, then you have the ability to remove those options, but you just follow the same steps. So what I did is I chose the disclosure template, and then you, again, just like we did before, we can modify it in this text box, just like I showed in the reason why letter one. Now, one thing to note is yes, we do provide our own. We do have both English and French options, but there's this area at the bottom here called user defined. And this is where we can load in our own templates if we have them uploaded in LDA. Now, if you need support with that, again, that's where our customer success team can help, but I'll also show you where you can upload your own if you'd like. So in here, you can see I have a custom reason why letter. I have a know your client document. Those are another one that we see commonly. Also, a life insurance replacement declaration. That's another one that we provide within the system. So just to give you a few ideas of what types of documents you can load inside of here. But within the user defined section, that's where you'll see the ones that you have, or they're custom to you and your account. Right below that, there's an option here called Manage Templates, which you can use to then load in your own. Another area where you can find this is under the Cases tab. And again, you won't see as many options as me, but you will see this one here, Report Note Templates. So when selected, what this will do is it will load up a page. Now you won't see all the options again, because I'm an administrator. You would only see the ones that you've loaded in here where you can make edits or delete them. But if you'd like to add in a new one, that's what this green button's for. So once selected, what this will do is it will ask you to, on this page, label or name the template. So you can give it a name, give it a title. So every time you select it, that title is used for the page title within the presentation. And then of course your body of text. Now, again, you won't see like the role section like I do, but when you click save, what it will do is it will save it to your account and make it accessible within that report notes area. So when you click on concepts and you go down to the bottom, you would see it under that user defined section. So it's pretty easy to load that information. Again, so long as you have the text, you put it into that area, it's then available and you can utilize that in every single insurance case that you create, or you can access multiple of them, as you can see in this example. So again, where I would load this in is once you're designing a case, you've loaded in plans or whichever recommendations you'd like to show, go down to the notes section and then look for the report note area. And that concept dropdown is where you can load in those compliance templates, either that we provide or that you load in. Again, if anybody has any question, feel free to throw that into the chat section. Now let's talk about the needs analysis. So I'll click on the needs analysis option here on the right-hand side. I'll just click that edit button. And you'll notice here when I go to it, it's already pre-filled in because I've created this example already. So you can do this on the fly as you're designing the case. You can do this alongside a client if you'd like to. But there is the option at the top. It says unshare, but if I click unshare, it will give me the shareable option for it, where it says link your client to fill on the top right. So once selected, what this will do is it will give you a web link that you can copy and paste into an email to share to the client, and they can access that web link on their own device, which allows them to fill in the values. So just for demonstration's sake, what I'll do here today is show this in an incognito window. I'll bring this up right here. Okay. So here's what the client would see. Now, if values are filled in, this will come through on the client's end. I usually recommend this for things like last expense, where the client maybe doesn't know what to put into that area, or like education amounts for tuition, if you have a general idea with by having that discussion, or if you talk to them about anything like amounts, you can of course pre-fill it in, but they can fill in the rest. And when they click the save button at the bottom here, this will lock in those changes and update it on the needs analysis within your account. Also, side note, the logo here, this is the logo that's set in your LDA account. So they won't see the life design analysis one. Whatever's on the cover page of your presentations is what they'll see here. So next thing is they don't have to send anything back to you. They just have to fill this in, click save, and they're done. And once that happens, you will see the changes occur in your account, but you'll also get a notification. One of the notification types is when a client fills in a needs analysis link that you've shared to them, and you'll get that alert within the program so that you can see what changes have been made. So that is a highly recommended option to use with a client if you're not doing the needs analysis alongside them. So at least they have their output and they help contribute to that fact finding element. And of course, the needs analysis, once this is created, and as long as the page is selected in your report components, so we'll go into that area and see what that looks like. So I'll just go back down here. So in your report components, you'll see the needs analysis. So long as it's checked off, that means it will be presented on the report. So then that information that is in here is disclosable to the client. Now, a common question I get from a client is, well, can I just show a needs analysis without showing recommendations? That is something you can do. If you have a needs analysis filled in, you can show it just on its own. The one caveat to that, though, is in order to generate a report, you need at least one plan inside of the design case page. So what I recommend as a workaround is add in one plan. Let's say like a term 10, kind of like I have inside of here. Just add that in. And before you generate the report, there's an option where you can select all the pages and then it will change to deselect all. But you can turn off every single page option except for the needs analysis. And if you have just the needs analysis selected and then you generate the report, even if you have a plan inside of the presentation, it won't show those plans. It will only show the page that is selected. So in this case, it will show the needs analysis. And then from there, you can share it, you can generate a PDF, you can print it. It gives you more capabilities there. We are looking at not making it so much of a step-by-step process to get to that end output for just the needs analysis. But if you are wanting to do that, no, you need to have at least a plan in the design case page. But from there, if you do, even if you're not going to use that plan, you can deselect all the pages except for the needs analysis and then generate the report to show that. All right, so we've talked about the first four steps, the advise and recommend. We won't go into too much today because we have a lot of materials where we've talked about it. And I'm sure this group has seen how, we have the life guide integration, we have the ability to add in spreadsheets from the carriers. One thing to note, it's not talked about too much, but we should discuss it here, is we also have a integration with Empire Life's eVision Illustrator. So for those of you that like using Empire Life for their whole life, and it doesn't even have to be a whole life, it can be any Empire plan, but the access point to it is through the whole life dropdown. What it will do is it will redirect you into their Illustrator. You can design a plan inside of there. And then there's a submit to LDA where it sends that information back to the case where you started from, and it adds in that information. So this can be for their state Optimax whole life plans. It could also be for a Solution 100 with values, a CI plan, anything that they offer in their product shelf you can bring in, but the gateway or the access to that is through there. So that's one way that we're looking at improving over time, is building these integrations with the carriers and their software. And Empire Life's a good example of an innovative carrier where we now have that available. So keep that in mind as another option other than just bringing in the spreadsheets. One quick other thing to note: no limit to what plans or carriers or amount of products. It's really up to you. We recommend, though, to show anywhere from 1 to 5 plans. And if you are adding in plans, it's always good to add in a description or even change the name of the plan. So, for instance, this has a term rider, and I mentioned that in the note here. I've removed the carrier's name, but I've mentioned that to 20 pay. I could get more specific and say like the dividend type, or if there's ADO or offset, if that existed. But again, that is something we highly recommend doing when you're presenting those options, just to disclose more information than the pure numbers and the data of it, which of course is translated in the visuals. And then the reason why we talked about already. So as you can see here, really just in establishing this case, you're covering off a lot of those elements to determine, well, if it is needs-based selling, how much insurance you need to present, because that's taken care of with the needs analysis. The advise and recommend, you have that all built in with the life guide integration or the ability to present those options. And then it's just those other documents. So making sure that you go to your account settings and then you load that in, or you add in your notes through the notes section and make sure you follow that step every time you design a case. But then once you're done, you generate the report, and the output is very much like we saw earlier on, where it's all branded to you, white labeled, and then of course including those compliance elements. So again, it's really integrated within the workflow, and it's just a matter of incorporating those extra components. The extra components, I would really say, are these two specific pages: the reason why and the disclosure, or an LARD, a know your client form, and then of course the needs analysis is the other one too. But now that we've talked about the main features, let's talk about a few other compliant features that you have inside of LDA, which kind of go outside of the needs-based selling approach. So first off, case sharing. If you share a case to a client, you send the interactive web link to them, You get the notification when the client views it. The client, from their perspective, they see the full report with the interactive visuals, the expandable tables, so they get a better view of the presentation. But I'd say one of the best features with it too is that we record and heat map how long they look at it for, how long they look at each page, how much interaction they do, and we store it within the design case page of the report. So this could actually be a compliant tool that you use to prove that, hey, the client has reviewed these recommendations that I provided to them, and here's how they reviewed those recommendations. So every time you share a case to a client, under the shared case statistics is where we can see that information. And this little button right beside it, that provides the advanced case stats, which shows per page how long it was looked at for, how much interaction was done, how many clicks were made. So we could see that at the top of each page. This being one of my main demonstration reports. I have a lot of views. I have a lot of clicks on here from sharing it to advisors directly or putting it in social media posts. But we could see those stats right there at the top of the page. So you get that back each time you send it to one unique client and once they view that report. If you're looking to share the report, that can either be done when you generate it, or we now offer the share button where when selected, it just copies the URL link or will generate a URL link if it hasn't been already, and then copies it so then you can send it to the client via email, text. Remember, text is an option, especially if you log into LDA on a mobile device, which you can do because we are just a web-based application. May work a little bit differently depending on if you're using a custom instance of LDA and having to log in through an SSO through your advisor portal. But note, you can do that just through that share button. And there are different setting options which you can enable or disable from here without generating the report, whereas before you had to generate the report in order to do that. So for tracking purposes, that's one option. Now, another one could be the document storage. So I'll scroll down here, or actually, you know what? I'll bring up another case just so, because this is one of my main demonstration cases I show on a lot of calls. I'll just bring up this example one that I was working on the other day. Okay, perfect. So this is definitely a little bit cleaner. I don't have a case view associated with this one, but what you could see inside of here is there is document storage that you have when creating a case. So where this could be utilized is storing any documents that go alongside this case. So that could be like illustrations for plans that you've used or you've recommended. That could be signed documents. Really anything that goes along with this case that you save locally, you can either save it in the case through this document storage option under the files section. Well, just on the right-hand side. Another way you could save this information is under the client's profile. So if you click on the client's name within the design case take page, it will take you to their client profile. You can also access the client profile from managed cases. That's probably the main way to do it for our policy management capabilities. But inside of here, you'll see there's a client note area where you can make unique notes to that client through here. But also on the client's profile, there is document storage. Here you can see some examples of like the engagement letter, the reason why a life insurance illustration is saved inside of here. So again, any components that are outside of LDA that you have saved on a local client file in your computer, you could also save it in LDA to consolidate everything together. So that's another, I'd say, important one inside of here. Uh, Now, another capability too also is the client survey option. When you run a market survey for a client, it will save, or you can have the ability to save it to the client's profile. So you have proof of the research that you did of the insurance recommendations before adding it into one of your presentations. So just to go over how we can do that, I'll go into a design case page here. We'll go back to that last one we looked at. And I'll just run a quick market survey here. In this example, oh, you know what? This was a juvenile plan, so just don't mind me for 1 second. I'm just going to remove that age override of age 5. So then it's using the 40-year-old example if I'm just searching a term plan. Okay, there we go. So I'll just run a basic one, 500,000 T10, regular risk paid annually. and my preferred companies. So I'll generate the report, I'll generate that survey here by clicking search. And what you'll notice here is there's an option that says save survey to client file. What this will do is it will save the top 10 results from this market survey into the client's profile. But it also generates a report that you can share or print for the client and send to them if you want to. But if you click add to case and add one of these options in, it just gives you a way to save those results. And you could talk about, okay, well, why you recommended X carrier from these results for the particular client you're working with. So you have proof of that research, again, just built into your process there. So again, this saves to the client's profile automatically, but you also have the ability to generate PDF. You could share it to the client, or you could present it to them face to face through this example here. Now, going back to the design case page, another feature or capability that can help kind of close the loop here is once you've recommended an insurance option to a client, let's say they proceed with it, they go through the application process, the policy is now issued and enforced. Any plans that were presented in an LDA case, you can save to the client profile and save it as a policy to then use to track later on through our client management options that we have inside of LDA. Now, if you'd like to save a plan or a plan to a client's profile, there's this option here just to the right of the name of the plan and to the left of our other common buttons, like the edit one where we can change a name and add a description called mark as in force. If you mark it as in force, it does save it as a policy to the client's profile. You can then input an issue date, a policy number, the premium value comes through here. So I'll just call this like CAD123, just for example. So what this does is it saves the policy to the client's profile. So then you have that information in your LDA account for tracking purposes. Now, for those of you that use one of our enterprise versions, you may have a data feed coming in automatically from the carrier. So you don't have to worry about this as much. I'd say the main benefit for those that are using the enterprise version is that you have cash value projections, you have premium renewals on term, which you wouldn't have through a data feed. But for those of you that are using standard LDA, where maybe we've loaded in your clients, but we can't update them, like on, let's say, like if you had a data feed, this is a great way of keeping on top of your enforced business, especially your renewals and your conversions, because best practice, you're using LDA to present to all your clients, even, no matter the size of them, then you can use that data you presented and save it to their client profile. So what you can see here is you get an indicator saying the plan's been successfully marked as sold. And then in their client profile, we'll go back into there. My Sharon sample has many policies inside of here, but here we could see there's that new example. It's now marked as enforced as of today, and now it's trackable inside of the client's profile. So it's kind of that holistic view from start to finish. And then finally, the other thing too is the policy management, making sure you're staying on top of your renewals, you're staying on top of your block of business. That's a big one too, because obviously just presenting insurance and the compliance elements that are required there, they're definitely an important piece of the pie, but they are a small piece of the pie in your client relationship. So being able to pull up their information and having that all consolidated from all your policy or all your carriers you're working with is certainly important. And that's one of the main areas that LDA excels in. So if you have your block of business in here under the manage client section, that's where you can see all your clients, you can see their policy information. Of course, you have the renewal or the opportunity filters that are built in to find renewals, exchanges, all that sort of stuff. So here's our Sharon sample client as an easy example with the renewal that's coming up later and just filtering that. So, and then there's also the notifications that come through here as well and staying on top of those alerts, because most carriers, they typically notify you 60 to 90 days prior to the renewal, whereas LDA, we do it as early as the 7th year of a T10 or the 15th year of a T20. So it's much earlier, those notifications, and much more frequently too, because they occur on an annual basis afterwards. So just having the ability to stay on top of your block of business, but even in cases where you want to show, okay, well, here's your client's current policy, here's a new recommendation. You have a lot of those records built in by uploading that information to LDA or using the data feeds on the enterprise versions. So we can take information that's inside of the policy section of LDA and add it into a presentation. So again, many different ways that you can use LDA for compliance sake. Hopefully, some of this is resonating with you and some of the gaps that you have within your business. But I'd say the main ones here to take away from a compliance perspective are the easy notes that we can take care of within the presentation. So, your mission statement, your disclaimer, disclosure, your needs analysis, your reason why letter. And that can be paired with everything else that you're doing already by presenting insurance options in LDA through the advise and recommend phase. So, all those elements are checked off, but there's certainly other ways that you can utilize it more so for the document storage, the notes, uh, storing the policy information as well, and then tracking that policy information over time to maintain that client relationship as well. So all that is covered within the software quite easily, or just because of the process that's integrated in there. Again, if you have any questions on the compliance side, please throw it into the chat section here within this Teams meeting. Also, if you have any questions while you're using LDA, remember that live chat bubble. That's the best way to get support from our customer success team. All right, so now let's move on to the best practices. We looked at two of them already today, and one of them was that Marcus sold we just reviewed earlier on within the design case page, and the other one was the market survey reports and having that, and then using that also as a compliant document that can support your insurance case or through any audits that may occur down the road. But the marking as sold kind of leads into another feature that we now have in LDA that some people are definitely taking advantage of, and those that are kind of have a best practice of using LDA because they not just have a opportunity funnel for their existing clients, but they also have that for new prospects and what they're working with, and that's the pipeline functionality. So for those of you that have been using LDA regularly, you may have noticed recently that there's this new pipeline stage button to the left of the generate report option where you can label a case in the pipeline and provide a description of that case and where it stands, expected close date, all that sort of stuff. And when you add a case into your pipeline, there is a pipeline report that you can either access through the report dropdown on any page, or just going back to our business dashboard here from the very home page. You can see here there's a pipeline funnel where you can see recent activity. You can see that actual description or the flow of that funnel and the different stages. But there is a pipeline report that you can also access through the main icons at the top of the page. And within that pipeline funnel, you can see where cases exist, even things like your opportunity amounts in your block of business, your opportunities won and lost, and then you can see more information. So for instance, if I want to see cases in a specific stage of my pipeline, I can click view and I'll be able to see those cases that are in that stage. Another thing I can do is I can use that pipeline funnel and I can click on one of the stages to then see any of the cases that are associated in that stage. Another way I can go through this is I could also see client by client that specific case, where they are, so what stage, the value of that specific opportunity. So I have access to that as well. It does sort it 10 at a time, but we can change the sorting or change the pages as well. But this is a great way to stay on top of your active insurance pipeline, track it, and then also have reporting that you can review after the fact, like how many cases you won throughout the year. So your one amount is technically your FYC throughout the year. So or an easy way to for you to track your FYC or your FYC potential through that opportunity amount. So a lot of advisors are really liking this feature and taking advantage of it. Anytime you create a case, it automatically gets added into that prospecting stage. And then from there, so here I'll just go to a case with a prospecting stage just to show you here quickly. If I'd like to make a change, so maybe it's in the discovery call. Uh, so I can change the stage of it just at the top there. What it's doing is it's loading a pop-up window and then also changing it in the pipeline. The opportunity of value that comes in automatically is the premium of I'd say the highest premium plan in your design case page. So in this case, that BMO T20, the annual premium of that is $910. That's why it's using that amount here. So then I could put an expected close date. So maybe I'll say it's September 1st, and I can add in a note. So I could say discussed these options with my client over the phone just for instance. And then when I click save, what it will do is it will add in those updates to this case. Where I can see those updates are just below the client info on the right-hand side and below our joint client button and a secondary insurance. So what I could see here under the pipeline information, there's that note that I've added in and those details. And then right below that, there's an option called pipeline history. This allows me to see the different stages and when it reached those stages and what edits happened to that case in the pipeline. So you can track it all the way through up until it's won or it's marked as in force. Now, in order to mark it as in force, you can either select the mark as in force button like I showed in that early example, or if you click on one, it will ask you to choose the plan to mark as in force. And then it will save that policy into the client's profile, which again will just help for compliance sake in the future tracking. So this is also a way to make compliance easier for you, but also help out with your insurance funnel. So definitely keep that in mind. And then the final one I wanted to show, and this is something I show on a lot of my calls. If you met with me one-on-one, especially in the last, call it 2 years, we've likely discussed this feature together. And that's the report templates. Now we've changed the name of it. It used to be called report concepts. We now call it report templates. We've also changed the positioning of it to make it a little bit easier. It used to be inside of the case controls settings section, but we now have it standing on its own. And why we do it is because I feel personally it's an important feature, especially for anybody that's new to LDA or for anybody to save time in LDA. And that's because these options here are pre-selected pages for different insurance strategies, concepts, presentation types. So when you make a selection here, it auto chooses the best page options for you based on the presentation type that you are working with. You can utilize the options that LDA provides. And if you make a selection here, so maybe I'll just call this a simple term report for example's sake. If I make a selection, I can scroll down and from all these page options, I can make other selections. So I can add pages in, I can remove pages if I want to. That's up to you. You have the ability to modify those templates. But if you're looking to create your own, under that cases drop down at the top of the page where we looked at the report note templates earlier, right below that, you'll see report component presets. So I'll just leave this case. I won't save my changes because I'm leaving the design case. But yeah, you'll see here, just like we saw for the report note templates that you can create, there's this one here, the same button called add new report component preset, or at least same location, where you label it. You can add in a report note to this if you want to. So if you're designing this for a specific strategy or concept, maybe you want a description of that, that's automatically in there. And yes, if you have your own report note loaded with the page selection, you can add your own other ones in there for like a reason why, a disclosure. It's not going to block or prevent that from coming up. And then you choose your page options. So you can pick what pages you want to see. Obviously, there's a lot of them in LDA, which is good, but also a bit daunting for anybody that's new. But just click save once you're done, locks in those changes, and then you'll be able to see that on the design case page, just under that same report template option. So where you would see it once it's created is at the bottom of the list. So for instance, my colleague Nick, he has his own corporate estate example. That's different from the preset one that we provide to all subscribers. So that's where it will appear at the bottom of the list when you create it. And the labeling that you do on that other page will be the labeling of it here in this area. All right, so that does it for my agenda. Hopefully, you found this call beneficial today or got some ideas on how you can utilize LDA differently for some of your compliance needs. Let's see if there was any questions, though, from the group here. One of the questions we had is, can I add my notes to the needs analysis section? So the notes and needs analysis are separate from each other, but if you want to have your own needs analysis related notes, you can add it as a separate report note. So if you were to do that, just provide a label of it, add in your body of text, and then it will appear along with any other report notes that you have. So that would be my recommendation is to have it as a report note, because the needs analysis, just based on the size of it with the chart and then the table, there's not as much room to add in the size of notes that'd be necessary to add in with it. So utilize that report note. They'll be paired like back to back, and then you could show that to your client in the report. Hope that helps though. And then another question is can we share the pipeline with our team members? Yes. So if any, let's say, cases are shared to another LDA account holder that's a part of your team, they would see that in their pipeline funnel. So it would appear not just for yourself, but anybody on your team that needs to see that case in your pipeline. For those of you that work more at an organization level and you manage advisors within a certain region, you can see pipeline like for your entire region. Again, this is more like our enterprise versions of LDA. But yes, if anybody has access to that same case, which can be done through our groups functionality that we offer in LDA. So essentially that allows you to pair clients from one account to another. So both accounts or multiple accounts can see that client file and any cases. Those cases will then appear under the pipeline and can be tracked. That was a great question there. Uh, any other questions though? I don't see anything yet. So in the meantime, what I'll do is I'm just providing my email into the chat section. So if anybody does have a question, feel free to contact me directly. Again, my main role in like design analysis is kind of running our training programs and initiatives and our customer success division as a whole. But we do have a team that can support you more in a direct functionality, whether it's live chats, one-on-one discussions, phone calls, that sort of stuff. But definitely feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to move you in the right direction or answer any questions that you do have. All right. Doesn't look like we have any additional questions, but thank you everybody for your attendance today. If you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see for future webinars, definitely let me know. I always want to hear what matters most to those that are in attendance. Again, hopefully you found something that's beneficial that you can implement. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But thank you again for your attendance. Hope everyone's having a great summer so far and look forward to seeing you next month. Take care, everyone.